So Momentum moves people forward to love God, love people, and make disciples who make disciples. It seems like looking at our Sunday morning numbers that we've grown about 50 people in 2023, which is a major give it up for God. Like, how cool. It seems like looking at our numbers that in the last 2 years from this point right now, we've grown about 100 people on Sunday mornings, which is crazy amazing. See, it's the give it up for God thing. It's super cool. We're averaging every week usually 80 to 100 devices online, which there's sometimes it's a college student, sometimes it's a multi-generational family watching together on a device. So we don't know how many people that is, but 80 to 100 devices. And then last year, we had 26 baptisms, which is give it up for God. Yeah. So cool. And, in the pandemic, we had like 2, because everybody was online. And like 2 people came in to be baptized. We're like, yeah, we'll baptize you. They came in hazmat suits, and I was like, does this count? Like, the water's not touching you. Well, I don't know what my theology is on that. So, but it seems like every year it kind of doubles since the pandemic. Like, what? 26 people last year. So cool. And what's cool to me is Jesus tells a parable. One sheep that wanders from the 100, leaves 99, goes off, gets itself in dangerous territory, but the good shepherd chases it down, rescues it, brings it home, celebrates it. Every one of these people we're talking about, online, here, baptized, is an individual sheep who means so much to Jesus. It's really, really cool. Like, they're not just, it's just a number, that's all, just, 100 people, that's really cool. 100 people with stories just as nuanced as yours, just as loved as you are by God. I mean, that's really incredible. So, with that, in the pragmatic leadership side, come some challenges, right? 100 more people than we had 2 years ago. Some of you notice, especially at 11 o'clock, coming in, sometimes you can't find a place to park, okay? And you're like, Smith preached 49 minutes. Hey, but the other service ain't even out yet, or whatever. But a lot of times it's just the fact that the parking, or whatever. 2 weeks ago, parking was full when you showed up, and Amplify, our student ministry, was going to be right after church. Parking was full, all the spots. People U-turned. Like Courtney Kaiser, my admin, was like, I saw people U-turn. It stinks. Like, people couldn't, maybe it was wet in the grass and stuff. There was no place to park, and people eventually left. She was like, oh, man, that stinks, and it does stink. And so it's kind of the infrastructure problem of healthy growth. And so just to save you the time, there are 73 parking spots outside. That's going to save you time in the cold. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I did it. I passed the savings on to you. But what we've been talking about for years is I think we need to create 48 more spots, which is about the most we could do, in between the Christmas trees, where we always park people for our big events, We need to create some more parking so that more people can keep coming, hearing about Jesus, growing spiritually, moving forward spiritually, being baptized into Christ. And so we're like, man, we need more space, or there will be no space for our 11 o'clock people who are as valuable as a sheep, just so valuable. And so we've been talking about that, and so we've kind of marked this off, and we want to do this, and so that gesture is like, that means any second. There we go. So putting this between the Christmas trees, 48 spots, there would be a walkway here that kind of lines up right about with that sidewalk over here, where people could cross and all that kind of stuff. We've been like, oh, man, ideally, because that's where we always park people for big events, ideally, we'd want to do it at the beginning of the spring. So to excavate and gravel, which is phase 1 of 2, early spring 2024, $50,000. Bang. Okay? Like, wow, so much money. Is that gravel made of gold? So anyways, then ideally we'd love to let it settle for, a couple months or whatever. And then the second phase, pave and stripe it, which we'd like to do the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, if we could, Lord willing, another 50 grand roughly. And so we're talking about 100 grand. Now, on top of that, the existing parking lot, it's 1 year past due, being resealed and striped again, which is a mere $6,500. So, that's peanuts compared to 100 grand. The 10th of a mil it'll take to do that, the $6,500, nothing. Okay, so see how I brought it up with a 10th of a mil? That's what it is in my mind as a leader. And so the good news is, though, I'm going to give you some good news on their side. I just found out last week we have paid off our mortgage for this church building. So great. That's a give it up for God for sure. The grass just feels different in your toes when it's paid off. So when you drive by, you'll see me out there barefoot this week, freezing. Luckily, God gave me clothes, but I'm taking my shoes off, and I got flowers behind my ears. So that's super cool. We had a $192K mortgage, which is really kind of a home mortgage size when we merged with Twinsburg Church of Christ, and that has been knocked out like Mike Tyson against Buster Douglas. So here's what I'm asking you to consider. 3 quick things. I'm calling them GPS action steps just to give it some structure. One is I'm just asking if you would pray about giving. Giving above and beyond. If you are already giving sacrificially as much, that's great, man, thank you. You're the reason we could renovate the lobby, which, by the way, we saved up pre-pandemic and during the pandemic and all that so we could just cash flow that. But this has become urgent. And so, just to pray about giving. Maybe you're somebody who I know, and again, I don't know all the stories here, but maybe you're like, man, I don't give it all. I don't give much. I haven't gone through to figure out who doesn't give it momentum. Or it might be like I'm giving it a level that's comfortable for me. Maybe it's time to get uncomfortable, or maybe I stopped giving at some point. Tons of stories. I know there are probably some people here who are like, I am sitting on a nest egg that's larger than I need, and I've been thinking, what is something I could do to invest in something eternal? And I'm sure the last thing came to your mind was a parking lot. Okay? But just to be like, how can I help create infrastructure for more spiritual growth for people to move people forward and help people win spiritually? And to say, man, I could write a check that would take care of a chunk of that and just give it up for God. And so it's going to take a whole bunch of tangible acts of faith for us to urgently do this. And I don't know that that's God's timing, what I outlined for you. I just know, man, God, wow, we're packed out. And obviously there's a problem past parking lot when we start talking about our auditorium and other things to come in the future. So second thing I'm asking you is pray. I'm just praying that God provides and ask you to join me in that. Pray that God provides. Often he does that through his generous people. But I was coming out of Planet Fitness the other day working out. This is a few weeks ago because I was already thinking about, man, when I preach this on February 11th, people are going to be mad at me. Talk about money, So anyways, I was getting in the car, and I just kind of felt like I asked myself, Dan, do you really believe that all the silver and gold are God's? That if he wants to build his place of worship, and it isn't all about the building. We've been very non-building centric for many years, meeting in Cinemark and schools. So just like, God, Dan, do you really believe? That was God and Dan. That wasn't what you thought it was. God, Dan, do you really believe, that the silver and gold are God? And I'm like, the silver and gold belong to God. And I'm like, man, I kind of had this weight lifted of I don't have to worry about whether people are going to give. God's going to help provide in whatever way he's going to do it. And so, often it'll be through people willing to share their fries. And the third is, even if you can't give above and beyond what you're doing, or you're not ready yet, this is still about your discipleship. So I would ask you to just study. What does God want you to learn? And a real simple way to do that is there are free books in the lobby, free books by Randy Alcorn called The Treasure Principle. Point number 1 you're going to love, they are short. It is such a short little book. It is way shorter than this sermon. And so it's so good, and it's power-packed with just points about stewardship and generosity and why God wants that for you in your life. But please don't walk out there and be like, oh, there's several left, but I'm going to leave some for the person behind me. They will all be there when you leave if that's the case, and I'll have to pack them away. Save me some time. Take a book, okay? So just study and just be like, God, how do you want to grow me through this? If we really thought about what would God do in my life and my circle of influence if I really believed it all belonged to God and I was just managing it? Really, what would happen in your life and the people around you? What would happen for us as a church? Imagine the potential if our church, what God could accomplish through us if we grew in our understanding. It's all God's. I'm just managing it. Imagine the stuff that we could do that isn't just parking lot, bigger auditorium or whatever. It's a lot of the stuff that we've been doing, but doing it on a bigger scale. So I'm so excited about where God's taken us.